Millionaire CEO left his pregnant wife. 15 years later, he saw her daughter as a rising business star. Hello, my beautiful family. Welcome home. This is your new family channel, Mr. Peter Family. God bless every single one of you. You are not just viewers. You are my heart, my strength, my family. And I promise you this, every story on this channel will fill your soul with love, joy, and satisfaction. This channel is created for my beautiful family, who believes in love, who enjoys heart-touching short stories, and who never forgets that family means everything. My family, don't forget to comment present so I know you are here with me, standing together like always. Now, let's hold hands as one family and begin today's story. Chapter 1. Golden Beginnings. When Love Conquers All. The sickly yellow glow of the fluorescent tubes in Miller's 24-hour diner cast a harsh glare on the laminated menus, but Michael Thompson didn't notice. For the third night in a row, the corner booth was his world, its cracked vinyl serving as the headquarters for an empire that existed only on the construction blueprints spread across the table. At 27, Michael possessed a quiet fire fueled by a lifetime in the shadow of his father's modest construction company. Thompson and Sons had built solid, middle-class homes in Denver's suburbs for 3 decades. But while his father saw security in cookie-cutter subdivisions, Michael envisioned gleaming towers and luxury developments that would redefine the city's skyline. The only problem was capital, and the fact that his revolutionary ideas sounded like reckless fantasies to the conservative loan officers who guarded the gates to his ambition. More coffee. The voice was soft but clear, cutting through his calculations. It belonged to Jennifer Rodriguez, the night shift waitress who had been refilling his cup with quiet efficiency for hours. At 24, she moved with the practiced grace of someone who had been working since she was old enough to hold a job. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, but her warm, intelligent brown eyes made Michael look up from his blueprints for the first time all night. "Please," he said, a note of weariness in his voice. He then found himself adding, "Sorry for camping out like this. I know I'm probably taking up a valuable table." Jennifer glanced around the nearly empty diner. It was 2:30 a.m. on a Tuesday in March 2007. The only other patron was old Pete, nursing his nightly cup of coffee over yesterday's newspaper. "Trust me, you and old Pete are the rush," she said, a smile touching her eyes. "Besides, you tip better than most of the truckers and insomniacs who drift in here." Michael felt an involuntary smile return. "What gave me away?" "The graph paper and the square footage cost calculations." "That and the fact that you've been muttering about millennial housing preferences for the past hour," she replied, her smile widening. "I take it you're in construction?" "Trying to be," Michael admitted, gesturing to the papers. "I'm Michael Thompson, and these are my completely unrealistic plans to revolutionize Denver real estate." He expected a polite nod and for her to move on, but she surprised him. She slid into the opposite seat, a genuine curiosity in her eyes that disarmed him completely. "Jennifer Rodriguez," she said, extending a hand. "What makes them unrealistic?" For the next hour, Michael explained his vision to someone who didn't just hear the words but understood the dream behind them. Jennifer asked sharp, insightful questions about target demographics, financing structures, and market positioning. When he lamented that loan officers saw his youth as inexperience, she leaned forward. "Have you considered targeting young professionals?" she asked, tapping a blueprint. "There's a whole generation graduating with good jobs, but no family money. They want something better than a starter home, but they can't afford true luxury yet. They're hungry for accessible aspiration." Michael stared, his coffee forgotten. "That's actually brilliant. Instead of building for millionaires, build for future millionaires." "Exactly," Jennifer said, her voice alive with the idea. "And you're not just selling them a home, You're selling them a lifestyle they can grow into. These people value smart home technology, energy efficiency, community amenities. They'll pay a premium for features that make them feel successful and forward-thinking. Over the following weeks, Michael's late-night sessions at Miller's Diner transformed. They became collaborative workshops, with Jennifer contributing insights that molded his vague ambitions into a concrete strategy. She researched gentrifying neighborhoods in the public library, identified Denver's growing tech corridor as their target, and pushed him to think beyond buildings to the complete customer experience. "You're not selling square footage," she told him one night, poring over demographic studies. "You're selling a story. These buyers want to feel like they're investing in their future selves." Their relationship evolved as naturally as their business plan. Michael started arriving for dinner during her break, their conversations bleeding from market analysis into personal histories, from zoning laws into dreams whispered across the Formica tabletop. He learned she sent half her tips home to support her younger siblings. She learned that beneath his ambition was a genuine desire to build something meaningful. One evening in late spring, as she helped him calculate the optimal price point for his condos, Michael realized he was falling in love. It wasn't her utility to his business he'd fallen for, but the woman herself, her quick wit, her infectious laugh, her unshakable belief in possibilities where others saw only obstacles. "Jennifer," he said suddenly, his voice catching her off guard, "would you have dinner with me? Somewhere that isn't here, somewhere with tablecloths." Her smile was radiant. "I thought you'd never ask." Their first date was at a modest Italian restaurant where they talked until closing time about everything except business. By summer, they were inseparable. When Michael finally secured his first construction loan, a $1.8 million project, the loan officer specifically praised his comprehensive understanding of market demographics and buyer psychology, a direct result of Jennifer's influence. Their wedding that September was small and intimate, held in her hometown of Pueblo. Her large, vibrant family filled the little Catholic church, embracing Michael as one of their own. His parents were polite but coolly distant, their tight smiles making it clear they considered their son's choice beneath him. Michael barely noticed, lost in the joy of marrying the woman who was both his best friend and his partner. As they danced to mariachi music under strings of lights, he felt like the luckiest man alive. "What are you thinking about?" Jennifer asked, looking beautiful in her simple, elegant dress. "That we're going to build something amazing together," Michael said, spinning her. "Not just houses, a whole life." Jennifer's smile was full of promise. "The best is yet to come, Mr. Thompson." As 2007 drew to a close, they settled into their modest Denver apartment, working side by side to launch Thompson Development Group. Neither could have imagined that within months their fairy tale would begin to fracture, testing Jennifer's strength in ways that would ultimately forge her into a force more powerful than either of them could have ever dreamed. Chapter 2. Cracks in Paradise. The weight of expectations. By the end of 2007, Thompson Development Group had exceeded every projection. The luxury condos, born from late-night diner conversations, had sold out before the last coat of paint was dry, generating a profit of $3.2 million and catapulting Michael into the orbit of Denver's real estate stars. What should have been a pure shared triumph began to feel complicated as Michael found himself navigating opulent social circles where Jennifer, his brilliant partner, seemed to fade into the background. The air in the Denver Athletic Club's private lounge was thick with the scent of expensive leather and old money. In early 2008, Christopher Williams swirled a glass of scotch, the amber liquid catching the light from the fireplace. "You need to understand, Michael," he said, his voice a low, confidential murmur. "Perception is everything in this business. Our clients aren't just investing in concrete and steel, they're investing in a lifestyle. They need to feel confident that their developer understands that lifestyle." At 50, Christopher was a master of this world, and his mentorship had been invaluable, but his advice was taking on a sharper, more personal edge. Michael felt a familiar prickle of defensiveness. "I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Jennifer," Christopher continued, as if reading his mind. "She's clearly intelligent and her contributions have been substantial. But you must consider the optics. How does she come across at a client dinner, at a fundraiser, at the kinds of gatherings where the real deals are cemented with a handshake, not a contract?" Michael shifted in his leather chair, the uncomfortable truth of his partner's words settling in his gut. He thought of a dinner just last week with potential investors from California. The table was a sea of polished silver and crystal. When the bouillabaisse arrived, Jennifer had looked at the complex array of utensils with a flicker of uncertainty before whispering to him, "Which one is the fish fork?" The investors hadn't heard, but they had seen her hesitation. Later, they'd exchanged nearly imperceptible glances when she'd mispronounced the name of a Napa winery. They were polite, but a subtle wall had gone up. They spoke to him, but they spoke around her. "The Belcaro project is our next big play," Christopher pressed, referring to the $25 million luxury development they were pitching. "These people need to feel a social kinship before they'll trust us with their money." Michael nodded, a knot tightening in his stomach. Jennifer had been his partner in every sense of the word. Her insights were the bedrock of their success, but he couldn't deny the awkward silences she created, the way her simple, off-the-rack dresses looked out of place among the designer gowns, the way her genuine curiosity about their world was often mistaken for naivete. The breaking point came at the Colorado Children's Hospital Benefit Gala in May 2008. Jennifer had been genuinely excited, seeing it as a chance for them to shine together. She'd spent hours at the library researching the attendees and practicing the nuances of formal etiquette. The simple black dress she'd bought from Nordstrom Rack was the most expensive piece of clothing she had ever owned, and as she got ready, her hope was palpable. But from the moment they stepped into the Brown Palace Hotel's opulent ballroom, that hope began to wither. The air was heavy with perfume, the sound of the string quartet drowned by the laughter of Denver's elite. When introduced to Patricia Morrison, wife of their potential lead investor, Jennifer extended her hand for a firm shake, while Patricia offered only her fingertips in the cool continental style. "How lovely to meet you," Patricia said, her smile a perfect painted line. "And what do you do, dear?" "I help Michael with business development," Jennifer replied, her voice steady but sounding small in the cavernous room. "How wonderful that you're so involved," Patricia replied, her tone implying it was a quaint little hobby. "I find it's best when spouses have their own separate interests. Charles would go mad if I tried to interfere with his business." The rest of the evening was a series of small, painful cuts. The wrong fork for the salad course, a blank look during a heated debate about a new exhibition at the Denver Art Museum. Michael watched it all, his own discomfort curdling into a quiet resentment. He saw his wife through their eyes, unpolished out of her depth, a liability. Most painfully, during the charity auction, as paddles flew up for bids that represented more than their yearly mortgage, Jennifer sat perfectly still, her hands clenched in her lap, a silent testament to the chasm between their world and this one. "The Aspen House package is lovely," commented Eleanor Davidson, wife of another developer. "Though I suppose not everyone skis. Some people prefer simpler pleasures." Jennifer felt the remark like a physical blow. Excusing herself, she fled to the restroom and stared at her reflection in the gilded mirror, seeing not the intelligent, capable woman who had helped build a company, but an imposter about to be found out. When she returned, Michael was deep in conversation with Charles Morrison, his expression animated, his laughter seamless. He was performing, and he was succeeding. He barely glanced up as she sat down. The drive home was shrouded in a heavy silence. "I embarrassed you tonight," Jennifer finally said, her voice barely a whisper. Michael's hands gripped the steering wheel. "You didn't embarrass me. But I didn't help, either." He couldn't argue with that, and his silence was a confession. In the following weeks, he began making excuses for her absence at events. It was simply easier. At a dinner party in Cherry Hills, Christopher introduced him to Michelle Parker, a stunning brunette whose pedigree was as flawless as her conversation. She spoke his language, understood his world, and saw him not as a construction worker's son, but as the success he was becoming. One evening in July, Jennifer looked up from the financial projections spread across their kitchen table. "When did I become a liability instead of an asset?" Michael set his coffee cup down with deliberate care. "That's not fair, Jen." "Isn't it?" she replied, her voice quiet but unwavering. "I help you plan the deals, I research the markets, I analyze the competition. But God forbid I show up to dinner and remind your important friends that your wife used to be a waitress." "It's not about what you used to be," he snapped, his frustration finally boiling over. "It's about where we're going. These people control billions in capital. We need them. And they need to see you belong with them," she finished, her eyes searching his, "which apparently means you need a wife who already belonged there." Michael didn't answer. He couldn't. His silence was a confirmation, a betrayal that hung in the air between them, cracking the very foundation of the life they had built together. Chapter 3. The Great Betrayal. When Ambition Destroys Love. The invitation arrived on a Wednesday morning in August 2008. It wasn't just paper, it was a key. Printed on cream-colored cardstock with raised gold lettering, the Denver Country Club crest seemed to shimmer with promise. Michael held it in his hands, feeling its weight, imagining the manicured greens and the hushed dining rooms where multi-million-dollar deals were born. This was the inner sanctum, the final validation. "This is it," he told Christopher Williams, his voice tight with excitement. "Morrison's people won't seriously consider the Belcaro project unless we're members. They need to know we belong." "Patricia Morrison specifically asked if you were a member," Christopher confirmed. "She's planning the club's annual charity auction. It's a major social event. You need to be there, and you need to fit in." The subtext hung in the air, unspoken but heavy. Jennifer needed to fit in. The application process was a blur of financial statements and personal recommendations, culminating in an informal interview dinner that September at Charles Morrison's Cherry Hills mansion. The house was less a home and more a monument to wealth, with ceilings so high they seemed to swallow sound and art on the walls that Michael knew cost more than his first condo project. Jennifer, looking lovely, but visibly tense in her navy blue dress, tried her best to navigate the treacherous social currents. She stood politely silent as the other wives, draped in silk and jewels, discussed spa weekends in Palm Beach and their children's summer programs in Europe. When she sincerely tried to help their hostess with a tray of appetizers, Patricia Morrison gently but firmly rebuffed her. "Please don't trouble yourself, dear," Patricia said, her smile perfectly condescending. "Maria has everything under control." The dismissal was a clear signal. Guests did not perform domestic tasks. It was a small moment, but it publicly branded Jennifer as an outsider. The evening reached its nadir during dinner. The conversation turned to charitable giving, a competitive sport among their set. "The key is finding causes that align with your values while maximizing the tax benefits," explained Robert Patterson, another potential partner. "We typically donate appreciated stock rather than cash." "That's brilliant," Jennifer said, her interest genuine and guileless. "We've been giving small amounts to various charities, but I never thought about the tax implications. Could you donate stock even if you don't have much capital gains to offset?" A brief, Icy silence fell over the table. The question, born of earnest curiosity, exposed their financial tier with brutal clarity. The other couples exchanged looks of faint pity. "Well," Patricia Morrison finally said, her thin smile a weapon, "it's just lovely that you're so community-minded." 3 weeks later, Michael was driving when his phone rang. It was the club. His application was being deferred pending further review. After he hung up, he sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles were white. It wasn't just a rejection. It was a verdict on him, on his life, on his wife. Christopher later translated the diplomatic language bluntly. "They think Jennifer is unsuitable, Michael, and that makes you unsuitable." That evening, he attended a fundraiser at the Denver Art Museum alone, telling Jennifer he needed to focus on networking. There, amidst the sculptures and abstract paintings, Michelle Parker was a vision of effortless sophistication. She found him near a Rothko, her expression one of perfect sympathy. "I heard about the club situation," she said, her voice a low murmur. "I'm so sorry. The whole process can be so arbitrary." She represented everything he was striving for: effortless entry, automatic acceptance. When she offered to introduce him to her influential circle, it felt less like a proposition and more like a lifeline. The affair began in October. It started with lunches that bled into afternoon drinks, then into intimate dinners. With Michelle, he wasn't the construction worker's son trying to punch above his weight. He was the ambitious, successful developer she saw him as. Each moment with her was a balm on the fresh wound of his social rejection, a rejection he increasingly, unfairly, laid at Jennifer's feet. Jennifer discovered the betrayal on a cold, grey afternoon in late November. A credit card statement lay on the kitchen counter, an innocuous piece of mail that would shatter her world. Her eyes scanned the entries, first with confusion, then with a dawning, sickening dread. Tiffany and Company A bracelet. Dinners at restaurants he'd claimed were for business, for amounts that made her stomach clench. A charge from a boutique hotel for a night he was supposed to be in Aspen. The pieces clicked into place with the cold, final sound of a lock. The confrontation happened that night. The rain outside lashed against the windows as Michael walked in, oblivious. "The Cartier bracelet was a particularly nice touch," Jennifer said. Her voice was quiet, eerily steady, as she pushed the statement across the counter. "I'm assuming it wasn't for me since I've never seen it." Michael's face went from pale to flushed in a heartbeat. "Jen, I can explain." "Can you?" she asked, and for the first time her voice broke, the tears she'd been holding back finally streaming down her face. "Can you explain living a double life while I'm working extra shifts to help us save? The only question I have is why. Was it just the sex? Or was it because she fits into your new world better than I do?" He looked trapped, his guilt warring with his resentment. "You don't understand the pressure. And I make you not belong?" She cut him off, her voice rising with a grief so profound it shook her. "Yes." The word exploded out of him, raw and cruel. "Yes, you make me not belong. Do you think I enjoy watching you struggle with wine pairings and which fork to use? Do you think I like seeing people dismiss us because my wife sounds like a waitress and dresses like she shops at Target?" The venom in his words struck her silent. She stared at him, at the man who had once loved her insights, who had called her his partner. He was a stranger. "I see," she finally whispered. "You've outgrown me. I'm another piece of your old life that doesn't fit the new image." He offered no defense, only the hard, unyielding silence of his ambition. 2 months later, in January 2009, Jennifer signed divorce papers that felt like a final act of erasure. Michael's lawyers had skillfully argued that his success was built on his family's business, rendering her contributions legally insignificant. She walked away with $15,000. The day she left their apartment for the last time in February, the city was cold and unforgiving. She was 3 months pregnant. She'd found out in December, just after their world had imploded, and had decided instantly not to tell him. He had made his choice, and this child would not be a pawn in his new life. This child would be hers alone. As she loaded her few possessions into her 15-year-old Honda, she made a silent promise to the new life growing inside her. They would not just survive, they would build something better, a life based not on social approval, but on authentic strength. She just never imagined it would take 16 years to keep that promise. Chapter 4. Rising from Ashes. The Making of a Warrior. The Greyhound bus hissed to a stop at the Austin, Texas terminal at 3:47 a.m. on a cool February morning in 2009. Jennifer Rodriguez, she had dropped the Thompson the day the divorce was final, stepped onto the pavement with $2,847 in cash, a suitcase held together with duct tape, and a core of determination forged in the fires of betrayal. At 25 and 3 months pregnant, she had chosen Austin with the same strategic precision she once used on Michael's business plans. It was a city humming with a tech boom, a place where hard work was said to matter more than pedigree. Most importantly, it was 1,000 miles from the ghost of her old life, a place where no one knew her as the waitress who wasn't good enough. Her first night was spent in a Motel 6 off the highway that smelled of disinfectant and desperation. Lying awake on the scratchy sheets, the unfamiliar city silent outside, she felt the first flutter of her unborn child kicking. Jennifer placed both hands on her still flat stomach, a wave of fierce, protective love washing over her. She made a promise into the darkness, a vow that would become her mantra for the next 16 years. "It's just us now, baby girl. We're going to build a world so much better than the one he threw away. He thinks I'm not good enough for his world. We'll create our own." Finding work while trying to hide a budding pregnancy was a brutal exercise in humility. The rejections were polite but swift. Yet Jennifer's quiet confidence and obvious intelligence opened doors that formal credentials couldn't. Within 2 weeks, she'd cobbled together an existence from 3 part-time jobs, morning shifts at a bustling downtown cafe catering to the early-rising tech crowd, afternoons doing bookkeeping for a small accounting firm that needed someone sharp and unsupervised, and evenings cleaning the sprawling homes of the wealthy families in the hills west of Austin. The schedule was punishing. Jennifer would wake at 4:30 a.m., her body aching, to catch the bus to the cafe. From 5:30 to noon, she served coffee and breakfast tacos, absorbing the ambient chatter of the city's dreamers, conversations about venture capital, market validation, and user acquisition strategies. She'd then race to the accounting office, where from 1 to 5 p.m. she learned the practical mechanics of business, cash flow, payroll, and the tax codes that governed profit and loss. In the evenings, cleaning those cavernous, silent houses, she observed how true success operated. The organized calendars, the dedicated home offices, the casual talk of investment portfolios. Every job was an education. She paid special attention to the Hispanic business owners she encountered. She saw their struggles firsthand, the language barriers that complicated loan applications, the cultural nuances that larger firms failed to grasp, the chronic undervaluing of their own services. They were brilliant craftspeople, chefs and builders, but they lacked the language and tools of corporate America. An idea, faint at first, began to form in her mind. Olivia was born on August 20th, 2009, weighing 7 pounds, 2 ounces, with her mother's dark hair and piercing brown eyes that seemed to analyze everything. Jennifer took exactly 2 weeks off, a period of profound love and bone-deep exhaustion spent in her tiny studio apartment. She used that time to organize a support system, connecting with other working mothers in her complex. Returning to work with an infant was a masterclass in logistics. She would feed Olivia at 4 a.m. before leaving for the cafe, pump milk in a cramped supply closet during her accounting break, and bring the baby with her to her evening cleaning jobs, carrying the infant in a portable car seat from room to room as she vacuumed and scrubbed. The other single mothers in her building became her lifeline, an informal childcare co-op born of shared necessity. They traded hours, meals, and moral support, a resilient, unspoken sisterhood of women determined to build a better life for their children. By Olivia's first birthday, Jennifer had saved enough to drop the cleaning job and enroll in evening business classes at Austin Community College. She chose her courses with purpose: accounting, marketing, business law, statistics. She wasn't just a student, she was a practitioner. Her professors were consistently impressed by her sharp, practical questions that connected abstract theories to real-world problems. Olivia, meanwhile, was blossoming into an exceptionally bright child. By 18 months, she was speaking in full sentences. By 3, she was reading. By 5, she was her mother's tiny assistant, sitting at the kitchen table and organizing receipts into neat piles with a focus that was startling. One evening, 6-year-old Olivia looked up from a stack of invoices Jennifer had brought home. "Mommy, this one is wrong," she announced, her small finger pointing to a line item. They calculated the sales tax at 8.25%, but the city tax here is 8.75%. They overcharged. Jennifer checked the math. Her daughter was right. In 2012, Jennifer graduated from ACC with highest honors and a crystal-clear vision. Armed with a $5,000 grant from a community development fund for minority-owned businesses, she launched Rodriguez Consulting from her kitchen table. Her first client was Maria Santos, the owner of the cafe where she had once worked. Maria's business was thriving, but every bank had rejected her application for an expansion loan. Jennifer didn't just write a business plan, she told a story backed by data. She developed a comprehensive financial analysis, created demographic studies on the growing market for authentic Mexican cuisine among Austin's tech workers, projected cash flows that made the loan a low-risk, high-return investment for the bank. When Maria secured a $150,000 loan, word spread like wildfire through Austin's Hispanic business community. Jennifer's approach was her competitive advantage. She didn't impose generic, one-size-fits-all strategies. She listened. She understood the cultural context, the family dynamics, and the community connections that were the true backbone of these businesses. She taught her clients to see their heritage not as a barrier, but as their most powerful asset. By 2015, Rodriguez Consulting had a waiting list. Jennifer moved into a small office and hired her first employee. Olivia, now a precocious 7-year-old, spent her after-school hours in that office, doing her homework at a small desk in the corner and absorbing the language of entrepreneurship. She learned about profit margins before she learned long division. This quiet observation turned into active participation. When a client struggled with an outdated inventory system, 10-year-old Olivia, who had been teaching herself to code online, suggested building a custom database. Over several weekends, mother and daughter worked together, creating a simple, elegant solution that saved the client thousands. This project gave birth to a new, lucrative technology consulting arm of the business. As the years passed, Jennifer watched in awe as her daughter's intuitive grasp of business sharpened into a formidable intellect. At 14, Olivia was no longer just observing. She was strategizing, her insights often more innovative than those of seasoned professionals. Jennifer Rodriguez hadn't just built a successful company from the ashes of her old life. She had raised a partner. She had forged a warrior. Chapter 5. The Phoenix Rises. Mother and daughter conquer the world. The email that would alter the course of their lives arrived on a Tuesday morning in March 2025. Olivia Rodriguez, now a poised and brilliant 15-year-old, was in her mother's downtown Austin office, debugging a client's inventory management system with a speed that still astounded Jennifer. "Mommy, you need to see this," Olivia said, her voice calm, but carrying a distinct note of significance. She turned her laptop screen toward Jennifer. The subject line was stark and impressive. Invitation to keynote, National Young Entrepreneurs Conference, Denver, Colorado. Jennifer's coffee mug froze halfway to her lips. Denver. The name was a ghost, a city she had fled 16 years ago, broke, pregnant, and branded by failure. It was the city where Michael Thompson had built his empire on the foundation she had helped him lay, only to discard her when she no longer fit his ascendant image. A complex cocktail of old pain and new pride churned within her. "They want me to deliver the opening keynote," Olivia continued, scrolling through the elegantly formatted invitation. "The topic is disrupting traditional business models. It's being held at the Grand Belmore Hotel. They're calling it the premier conference for entrepreneurs under 25. Jennifer knew the Grand Belmore. It was a palace of polished marble and old-world luxury, a place she used to walk past, staring at the well-dressed patrons, feeling like an outsider looking in. The irony was so thick she could taste it. Her daughter, the daughter Michael didn't know existed, was being invited not just through the front door, but onto the main stage. "The honorarium is $25,000, Olivia added, a flicker of amusement in her eyes. "Plus, they want to feature me in a Forbes magazine spread tied to the conference as one of America's most promising young business leaders. Apparently, my work with the Heritage Advantage framework has caught national attention." It was an understatement. Over the past 2 years, Olivia's reputation had exploded beyond Austin. Her innovative framework for helping minority-owned businesses leverage their cultural authenticity had become a celebrated case study at Harvard Business Review. Her custom software solutions were now licensed by hundreds of small businesses across the country. At an age when most teenagers were worried about final exams, Olivia was being courted by venture capital firms and invited to guest lecture at business schools. "What do you think?" Olivia asked, her perceptive gaze studying her mother's carefully neutral expression. Jennifer had told her little about her father, only that he was a painful chapter from a past life. But Olivia was sharp enough to sense the weight that the word Denver carried. Jennifer looked at her daughter, so confident, so brilliant, so utterly self-possessed. Olivia commanded respect in boardrooms with executives 3 times her age. She could dissect a complex financial statement with the precision of a seasoned CPA. She was everything Jennifer had been, but polished, armed, and fortified by a success that no one could ever take away from her. This wasn't just an invitation. It was a summons from fate. "I think," Jennifer said slowly, a determined fire igniting in her eyes, "that it's time for you to show that world exactly what you're capable of." The decision set in motion a chain of events that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The Forbes photographer spent a day at Rodriguez Consulting, capturing images of Olivia leading client meetings, her mother watching with quiet pride from the sidelines. The resulting article was titled, "The Teenage CEO Who's Revolutionizing Small Business Consulting," and it painted a portrait of a prodigy whose success was rooted not just in intellect, but in a profound sense of empathy and cultural understanding. The night before their departure for Denver, Jennifer found Olivia in her bedroom, the glow of her laptop illuminating a keynote presentation she had already rehearsed to perfection. "Nervous?" Jennifer asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Not about the speech," Olivia replied, closing the laptop. "But I keep thinking about why you left Denver. You never told me the whole story." Jennifer had anticipated this conversation for years. Taking a deep breath, she finally unburdened herself of the story she had carried alone for 16 years. She spoke of Miller's Diner, of shared dreams over blueprints, of the slow, corrosive effect of social pressure. She described the painful humiliations, the affair, and the devastating divorce that left her pregnant and penniless. Olivia listened without interruption, her expression unreadable. When Jennifer finished, her voice thick with unshed tears, Olivia asked a single, quiet question. "So my biological father has no idea I exist?" "None," Jennifer confirmed. "He chose his path. We made ours." Olivia was silent for a long moment, processing the weight of the revelation. Finally, she looked up, and in her eyes, Jennifer saw not anger or sadness, but a cool, focused resolve that mirrored her own. "Good," Olivia said simply, "because I wouldn't want him to think he had anything to do with who I've become." The first-class flight to Denver was a world away from the Greyhound bus of Jennifer's memory. As the plane descended, revealing a skyline now dominated by gleaming glass towers, some of which, Jennifer knew, were Michael's. She felt a strange sense of detachment, as if watching a movie of someone else's life. They checked into a sprawling suite at the Grand Belmore, a space larger than their first two apartments combined. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of downtown, including the imposing headquarters of the Thompson Development Group. "That's quite a view," Olivia commented, following her mother's gaze. "Yes," Jennifer replied, her voice tight. "It certainly is." That evening's pre-conference reception was a glittering affair in the hotel's rooftop ballroom. 300 of the nation's brightest young entrepreneurs mingled under crystal chandeliers. Olivia, poised and confident in a simple but elegant dress, moved through the crowd not as a child prodigy, but as a peer. She discussed market trends with startup founders and venture capital strategies with investors, her insights sharp and articulate. Jennifer watched from the edge of the room, a glass of champagne untouched in her hand. She saw people who looked just like the ones who had dismissed her all those years ago. But this time, they weren't dismissing her daughter. They were clamoring for her attention. "Your daughter is remarkable," said a woman who introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Chen, a business professor from Stanford. "I've been teaching entrepreneurship for 15 years, and I've never seen someone so young with such a sophisticated grasp of both strategy and execution. She's not just a success story, she's a paradigm shift." Later, a well-dressed man approached them. "Miss Rodriguez," he said, extending a hand to Olivia. "Robert Harrison, Denver Economic Development Partnership. Your work is creating a major buzz. Have you ever considered consulting for Colorado companies?" Jennifer's heart hammered against her ribs, but Olivia's expression remained perfectly composed. "I'm always interested in helping businesses that are ready for sustainable growth," Olivia replied diplomatically. "Excellent," Harrison said. "In fact, one of our region's most established firms, Thompson Development Group, has been looking to bring in a fresh perspective on their market positioning." The name dropped into the conversation with the force of a physical blow. Jennifer felt the blood drain from her face. Olivia didn't even flinch. A slow, calculating smile touched her lips. "How interesting," Olivia said, her voice smooth as silk. "I'd be very curious to learn more about their current challenges." As they returned to their suite, Jennifer realized this was no longer just a speaking engagement. Fate was serving up a reckoning on a silver platter. They had not come to Denver seeking vengeance, but justice had a way of finding those who deserved it. Tomorrow, Michael Thompson would read about the brilliant Olivia Rodriguez in Forbes, and then he would watch her take the stage, completely unaware that the architect of his potential salvation was the daughter of the woman he had so ruthlessly cast aside. Chapter 6. The Reckoning, When the Past Collides with Justice. The Grand Belmore Hotel's main ballroom buzzed with the energy of 500 ambitious entrepreneurs. Michael Thompson, however, felt none of it. At 45, he still wore the armor of success, a tailored Italian suit, a Patek Philippe watch, but beneath it, he was bleeding out. Thompson Development Group, once the juggernaut of Denver real estate, was drowning in debt. 2 years of disastrous market bets and over-leveraged projects had brought his empire to the brink of collapse. His acrimonious divorce from Michelle Parker in 2020 had cost him millions, and his partnership with Christopher Williams had dissolved in a flurry of bitter litigation. He was isolated, desperate, and running out of time. He stood near the back of the ballroom, nursing a lukewarm coffee, only half listening as Patricia Morrison, still a gatekeeper of Denver society, commented beside him. "The keynote speaker is some teenage business prodigy from Texas," she said dismissively. "Honestly, what could a child possibly teach us about the complexities of a real business?" Michael grunted in vague agreement, his attention fixed on a text from his CFO detailing their plummeting cash reserves. The conference director, James Davis, stepped to the podium. "She has been called a paradigm shift in minority business development. Please join me in welcoming the founder of Rodriguez Consulting and a Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree, Olivia Rodriguez." The name hit Michael like a physical blow. Rodriguez. It was a common name, he told himself, a coincidence. But as a poised young woman walked confidently onto the stage, the world tilted on its axis. It wasn't just her dark hair or the elegant line of her jaw. It was the way she held herself, a quiet, unshakable confidence that sent his memory hurtling back 16 years to a diner booth and a brilliant smile. And then she turned to the audience, and he saw her eyes. They were his eyes, his grey-green intelligent eyes, staring back at him from the face of a stranger. His breath caught in his throat. "Good morning," Olivia began, her voice clear and commanding, filling the vast room. "How many of you have ever been told you don't belong, that your background, your accent, or your ideas make you unsuitable for a particular room or conversation?" A murmur went through the crowd. Michael felt a cold dread wash over him. This couldn't be happening. If this girl was on the cusp of 16 in 2025, she would have been born in late 2009. The timeline was a perfect, damning fit. "I'm here to tell you," Olivia continued, her gaze sweeping the room, "that being told you don't belong is the greatest competitive advantage you can possibly have." She then launched into a presentation so insightful, so strategically brilliant, that it left the audience spellbound. She deconstructed complex market dynamics with a sophistication that most MBA graduates couldn't match, using her Heritage Advantage framework as a prime example. She wasn't just intelligent, she was a visionary. And as he watched, Michael was gripped by a terrifying cocktail of awe and horror. The daughter he never knew existed was commanding the respect of the very world he was about to be exiled from. During the break, Patricia Morrison leaned in. "Quite impressive for a child," she conceded. "I did some research. Rodriguez Consulting was started in Austin by some single mother, a Mexican woman who apparently built it from nothing." A Mexican woman. Austin, built from nothing. The pieces of Michael's shattered reality clicked into place with horrifying certainty. He excused himself and spent the next hour in a secluded corner, frantically scrolling through the Forbes article on his phone. The headline, "The Teenage CEO Who's Revolutionizing Small Business Consulting," swam before his eyes. And then he saw it, a photo of Olivia standing beside her mother. It was Jennifer, older, more polished, her face etched with a strength and confidence he'd never seen before. She was everything he had once told himself she could never become without him. In that moment, he realized his life's greatest mistake wasn't a bad business deal, it was a catastrophic failure of character. He found Olivia at the networking reception that evening. She was surrounded by admirers, but he waited, his heart pounding, until he saw a small opening. "Miss Rodriguez," he said, his voice hoarse. "An incredible presentation. I'm Michael Thompson, with Thompson Development Group." She turned, and looking into her eyes up close was like looking into a mirror of his own past. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson," she replied, her voice polite but cool. He saw a flicker of recognition in her gaze, a subtle tightening around her eyes. "Robert Harrison mentioned your firm might be interested in a fresh perspective. I was hoping we could discuss your consulting services. My company is at a pivotal moment." "Rodriguez Consulting has specific criteria for its clients," she said, her words precise and deliberate. "We partner with companies committed to ethical practices and sustainable, long-term value creation. We don't engage in short-term profit maximization at the expense of integrity." The subtle, perfectly aimed critique landed like a punch. Just then, Jennifer walked over and their eyes met across the crowd. 16 years vanished. He saw the diner, the wedding, the rainy night of their final brutal fight. She looked at him not with hatred, but with a calm, appraising distance that was somehow worse. "Hello, Michael," she said, her voice even. "Jennifer," he managed to say, "you look wonderful." "Success tends to agree with people," she replied, a faint, unreadable smile on her lips. He had to know. As Olivia was momentarily distracted by an associate, Michael leaned in, his voice a desperate whisper. "She's my daughter, isn't she?" Jennifer looked at him for a long, silent moment. "She is my daughter," she corrected him, her voice quiet but unyielding. "I raised her. I educated her. I supported her. Biology is just DNA, Michael. Family is built on loyalty and love, concepts you discarded when you decided I wasn't good enough for your world. I had a right to know. You gave up your rights with a credit card statement and a string of cruel words," she cut him off. "You made your choice. I made mine. And my choice was to build a life for her free from the poison of your superficial world." She turned and walked away, leaving him alone with the devastating weight of everything he had lost. 3 days later, his attorney called, his voice grim. "Michael, you have a problem. Rodriguez Consulting has been systematically purchasing your company's distressed debt from your lenders. They now control over 60% of your outstanding obligations." 2 hours later, Michael sat in a sterile, temporary office, watching Jennifer review his financial statements with the detached precision of a surgeon. Olivia sat beside her, her brilliant daughter, occasionally pointing to a line item and asking a question so sharp it made Michael's own CFO flinch. "Your company is insolvent," Jennifer said finally, closing the folder. "Over-leveraged, negative cash flow, projects stalled. Any other creditor would force liquidation within 90 days. But we're not any other creditor," Olivia added, her gaze level and unwavering. "What do you want?" Michael asked, the words tasting like ash. "A complete restructuring," Olivia stated. "New leadership, a new board, and a new strategic direction focused on building communities, not just luxury boxes. We will implement the Heritage Advantage framework to connect with underserved markets you've ignored for years. And if I refuse, your company will cease to exist by Christmas," Jennifer said simply. "Your legacy will be a bankruptcy filing. But if you agree to our terms, you might learn what it means to build a business with a soul." Michael looked at the two extraordinary women before him, the wife he had deemed unworthy, and the daughter who was his brilliant living legacy of that mistake. It was a checkmate, executed with perfect poetic justice. "What role would I have?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "You would be retained as a junior partner," Olivia replied, a hint of steel in her voice. "With significant oversight and severely limited authority. Your first project will be managing affordable housing developments in Pueblo. You will report directly to my mother and me. You'll learn our business from the ground up." He was being sent back to the beginning, to Jennifer's hometown, to learn the value of the world he had once disdained. He hadn't been destroyed. He had been humbled. He had been given a chance to earn back a piece of his own humanity. Looking at his daughter, so powerful, so confident, shaped entirely by the woman he had cast away, he felt a profound and devastating sense of regret, but also a flicker of something else, hope. "I accept," Michael said. As he signed the documents that made him a subordinate in the company that once bore his name, he understood that justice wasn't always about destruction. Sometimes it was about reconstruction. And perhaps, if he worked hard enough, if he truly learned the lessons they were there to teach him, he might one day earn the right to know the remarkable daughter whose existence was both the monument to his greatest failure and his most unexpected second chance.